It's a horrible day in the mass pit. A horrible day in the mass pit. It's so creepy and so spooky. Anyway, Nick down here in the mass pit, and he's got a pumpkin here, and it's really not heavy. It's made of foam, and the topic of this video is actually the pumpkins that I make and sell out of resin. We've got the 78 pumpkin and the 2018 pumpkin. And, oh, you know what? Today is Friday the 13th when I'm filming this video, so I've got my Friday the 13th hoodie on, and a little information about this. This is my picture, and I did not have this custom done. Actually, the fine folks at Wish.com stole my picture, and they put it on hoodies and T-shirts and everything. And actually, the picture said, or the original picture I did for Friday the 13th, it says Friday the 13th up here, but they didn't do a good job of really laying the layout here. Friday the 13th, ha! Yeah. And so thank you for the people at Wish. And I bought one. It was actually cheaper than having me custom made one. I think this only cost like $10 or something. And they also stole another picture of mine. This one here. I really like this one. This is a really good one. And the funny thing about this one is my website, right under where it says Happy Halloween, my website is on there, handyboy.com, which is soon to be defunct. It's going to the maskpit.com. But anyway, they left my website on under there, so I don't know, maybe I got a little business from these T-shirts here. But yeah, they really did a nice job in this one. I like this one. But anyway, so in case any of you have your, I'm hoping, I've got a lot of pictures out here of the 13 mask, and I wish that Wish would steal a few other of my pictures, because I'd really like to have them on T-shirts for like $10 instead of doing a custom job, which costs, you know, like $30 or $40. So anyway, so let's get back to our pumpkins, shall we? Okay, so yeah, these are the resin pumpkins, and this is the one that I brought in. I've got to give you a little history of me replicating pumpkins. Now this pumpkin right here, it's made of Great Stuff foam insulation, which came out in the 80s. And when that came out, I made a lot of stuff out of Great Stuff. I'm like, this stuff is great, not just for insulating your house and cracks, but you can really make some cool stuff with it. And so I experimented with it. And what I did for this one, I took a real pumpkin. I made a mold from the real pumpkin, and I had to make it in 2 halves, because I had to fill each half with the foam insulation. And then when it dried, I sandwiched it together. Oh, and the first coat was, I had to make a latex skin in the plaster of Paris mold. So I did the latex skin first, let that dry, put in the Great Stuff, and then sandwiched it together and caulked the seam as well as I could. Now the thing about Great Stuff insulation is it cures kind of wrinkly, and you get some little voids in here like this. And so it did have its pitfalls. It was very hard to, everyone came out a little bit different. And then of course I cut the face into the pumpkin, and I put holes back here for the to put a light in here. Never put a if you want to do these, do not put a real candle in these, because it will go up in flames. But you can put Christmas lights in there, or tea lights. And now, like I said, Great Stuff came out in the mid-'80s, and this is before foam pumpkins were invented. I had these out in my yard probably 10 to 15 years before you could go to Walmart and buy a foam pumpkin. Now, like I said, Great Stuff. I probably got a can of it back here. I don't know. But anyway, great stuff was invented in the mid-'80s, and I made a lot of stuff and experimenting with it. I actually made a life-size T-Rex head, which there is a how-to video of how I did that. I'll put that in the links if you want to click on that. Made it out of plywood, chicken wire, and great stuff. It came out awesome. So click on that video. But I started doing these, and yeah, and it came out in the mid-'80s, and so I made the pumpkins, and I would put them on my roof and put lights in them, and they would stay up for quite a while. And people would say, how do you get your pumpkins to not rot? You have them up for so long. And nobody knew that, because there was no such thing as an artificial foam pumpkin. I would like to say I invented the first artificial foam pumpkin, made out of great stuff. And you couldn't go to Walmart, you couldn't go to Michael's, they did not exist, an artificial foam pumpkin. The only pumpkins that did exist were those flimsy ones with the handle on it that you put candy in, you get for $1.99. Those were the only, a realistic foam pumpkin did not exist. Yeah, they didn't come around until like 10 or 15 years later after I had this. I was like, somebody must have drove by my house and got the idea and stole it from me. But that's all well and fine. Just like the people from Wish, you know, it's all good, you know. So I did these, and so then let's fast forward into the 2000s. Once again, I went back to getting a real pumpkin. I went to the pumpkin patch, picked out about 10 pumpkins, and brought them home and lined them up. And I picked out the one that I thought would make the best pumpkin replica, to do with size and shape, and just to have a real nice pumpkin look. Well, first of all, I cut out the face in the real pumpkin. It looked exactly like this. I have pictures of it I'll put up right now. History of how they came about, and the 2018 pumpkin is the exact same pumpkin. What I do, I actually melt it to squish it down and deform it, and paint the rot on there, but they are exactly the same pumpkin. Just a little, yeah, just a little squishier and rottier. Now this video came along just in the amount of time. I was just upstairs editing the video to post it tonight, and I didn't have this process filmed because I didn't. When I started making the current pumpkin, I didn't think I was going to make a video of it until I was into the project. So I didn't film this project, but I just got an order for another pumpkin, so I'm going to do it right now. Okay, so now I can give you a look at the actual mold. And this silicone was put over the original real pumpkin. And you can see all the detail in there. And this was cut out. The original pumpkin was taken out of there, and it was, you know, pretty much scrapped. So now we have this, and then this is what's called the mother mold. And this keeps the original shape of the pumpkin so that it doesn't come out lopsided or anything. This is the original shape of the pumpkin, and this was put over the mold, over the silicone mold, while the original pumpkin was still in the silicone mold. So you have the exact shape of the pumpkin once this outer resin mold is put on there. So I'm going to put that on there. Put the cover on there, and we're going to put the okay, so we have this. What I want to do, I want to make sure that that seam down there is lying flat, and I'm going to put it in this bucket here. And this is what I use to cast the pumpkins in. It's a 2-part resin mixture. And my battery's going dead, so I got to change it right now. And I have some of that in these squeeze bottles, and you'll notice that I have, from experience, I know how much resin that it takes, because to do a really good pour, you don't want an excess, or you don't want to not have enough and not get good coverage. I am putting just a little bit more in because I realized on my last pumpkin I didn't have quite enough in. So I'm trying to compensate for that. Now every second counts when you're doing this. And I can feel it actually heating up and getting warm. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to give it a quick rotate to make sure everything is getting covered. Then I'm going to cap it. And when I first started doing this, this is a piece of cardboard, and I originally put a piece of cardboard on there. But with the subsequent layers built up, it's actually like a plug now that goes in there. And so now I have to, this is called rotocasting, and I have to rotocast this for probably about 2 minutes now, because a minute has already gone by. And we want to make sure you keep this in motion, because you want to get as even coverage as you can possibly get. So you can't let it sit while it's setting up, or you'll get thick spots and thin spots. And they actually make a rotocasting machine where you put your mold in this machine, and it is really something to watch. It's like, but it does what I'm basically doing all automatically. You don't have to do it. But the machine that does this, it takes up, it's so big, it would probably take up a quarter of the mask pit. So I can't, and they're very expensive, so I can't really have one of those down here. I have to do it by hand. And one thing about, when I said it's got about a 3-minute curing time, and that depends on what temperature that you're working in. Now I'm down here in the mask pit, and it's a little cooler down here than they suggest the working time, which is about 72 degrees. It's probably about 68 to 69 degrees down here in the mask pit. And so things kind of tend to take longer to set up. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna let that sit for about 15 minutes, and I'm gonna put another coat of that in. And I'm not gonna show the process because it's just like this. Like I said in my last video, second verse, same as the first. And the next step is to cut out all the insets and to paint it. Okay, we're now going to cut out the insets and the selvage down here. And I do this by 2 methods. Sometimes I use a Dremel, which I kind of got away from because it's awful messy. But this is a little wood burning contraption here for super fine detail. And I've had this actually probably about 50 years or more. And I used to do a lot of wood carving of wildlife, and particularly birds. And this fine tip, it's like almost like a razor blade. You would burn the feather quills into each feather thousands and thousands of times for a bird. And that's what I originally got this for. But I found out that it cuts through the plastic pretty quickly. It heats up. And so I'm going to, you can't see it, but, and you can see the smoke. I usually have a little fan that blows the smoke away from me. And as soon as I do this for a few seconds here, just to show you what I'm doing, I'm going to get it back out. Because it seems to want to always come right up into my face. Okay, I'm going to get my fan out and I'm going to finish this. And I'm not going to show this whole thing because it takes quite a while. And I just broke my fan, by the way. I set it on my workbench and I set it too close to the edge and it went crashing to the floor. So now I don't have it anymore. And but they all look so fake. I'm like, why can't they just, why doesn't somebody just mold a real pumpkin, one of these big companies, and so it looks real? And then it's like, so I waited. I'm like, sooner or later somebody's going to do it. Well, nobody did it, so I had to do it myself. All right, so we've got the whole face cut out there. We loaded up our airbrush. And the first thing I'm going to do is to shoot the pumpkin flesh, or the yellows, I guess you would call it. A lot of people ask me, what kind of airbrush do you use, Nick? It's nothing special, believe me. I usually paint Michael Myers masks and pumpkins. This is not fine art. You don't need like $1,000 equipment. This airbrush, a Pache, was bundled with an air compressor on Amazon for under $200, and it works fine. Now, when I'm shooting latex paint for my masks, yes, it does clog up. Any airbrush, I don't care how expensive that it is going to clog up if you put latex in your mixture. It is what it is. You just got to clean it out. So, but nothing, expensive, over the top here. Pache. Look on Amazon and look for a Pache airbrush compressor bundle, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it. Now, this orange that I'm using, while I still had this pumpkin in my possession, the real pumpkin, I matched the paint to the actual pumpkin. You cannot yet go to the paint store, and I know there are a lot of paints that are labeled pumpkin. They are not truly pumpkin. They're usually too bright, and the orange needs to be muted down, usually with a little brown. And this is going to take several coats. And the fake foam pumpkins, when they first came out, they're a little better now, but they were always horribly, fakely painted, fake orange, fake stems, and just so fake. It's just like fake news, fake. fake colored, fake pumpkins. That's all it is. Okay. Now the stem gets hand painted with a special mixture of green that I also duplicated to match the original pumpkin, of light avocado and black, to get a very dark musky green. I just got paint on my new pants. So we're gonna, if you get paint on your clothes, always flush it out with a lot of water before it dries, and you'll be able to get it out. Believe me, I'm an expert at getting paint and latex off of my clothes. And this isn't any particularly fancy schmancy paint. I believe it's Apple Barrel from Walmart. I mean, so many people think you have to get such expensive equipment and materials and everything, and you really don't. I would say stay away from the El Cheapo stuff, the stuff that's too cheap to be true. But, you know, you can go with mid-range materials to work with and equipment. I have seen some people do fake pumpkin rehauls, and a lot of those are good. Although some people tend to overpaint it, and they try to make it look real by overpainting it and accentuating all these pumpkin ridges in here. They kind of accentuate that, and that's not what a real pumpkin looks like. Believe me, I studied my pumpkin, and it is pretty much a solid orange. There are no shadings in the pumpkin ridges to make them show up. It is a solid orange. And the finish, it's not a glossy finish, it's not even a satin finish. And it's not a true matte finish. It is closer to a matte finish with just a slightly little sheen. And I'll show you how I do that a little later when I get into sealing the pumpkin. Okay, we've got our stem painted in here. Now we're going to do, because stems are not a solid green, we're going to do a little dry brushing here with a little bit of now we're going to get into the surface little imperfections that also trick your brain into believing it's real. There's a lot of little spots on pumpkins. I call them pumpkin scars. And there are certain characteristic little pumpkin scars that I'm replicating right here that were on the original 78 pumpkin used in the opening of Halloween. And also, the pumpkin used on Halloween was actually not a pumpkin, it was classified as a gourd. They couldn't find actual pumpkins, and I think the only thing they could find, I don't know where they found it, but they found it, and it was big. It was probably 3 times the size of this. And they used it in the first scene in the movie, or not the first scene, the first time you see the pumpkin, it looks totally different than this. And then to do the opening scene, they took that pumpkin and modified it with a different, they cut the teeth in, and everything was modified. But it was the same, big gourd. They just used it twice. Now I just gave this a coat of matte clear sealer, and so like I said, it's totally flat here. That's not the way your pumpkin is. So what I have is I have a little bit of satin, and I'm going to give it just a misting of satin. Just so it's not totally flat orange. And I kind of like that right there. Just a hint. And you can see the pumpkin surface because it was cast from a real pumpkin. Pumpkins are not naturally perfect. They do have their little bumps and scars and little imperfections, and that's what makes this one so realistic, because this was every little ding on there, a little imperfection, is from an actual real pumpkin. And because the resin is somewhat translucent, it gives the pumpkin a nice glow, a nice Halloweeny, pumpkin-y glow. And here is the H40 2018 pumpkin, which is it is hand melted and hand shaped. See what I did there? Hand shaped to replicate a rotted pumpkin. Now another cool thing about these pumpkins are, because the insides are still the white resin, if you get a, you can get these tea lights in there that I have in there now. They can either go to yellow, or like the one I have in here, you can put the switch over to the other side and it goes to a color changing LED, which is pretty cool. So there we have the resin realistic pumpkin and the its forerunner, the great stuff semi-realistic pumpkin. So once again, the reason I did this video is because somebody suggested, why don't you do a video on the pumpkin, on the resin pumpkins, because a lot of people don't even know I make these. So this is going to hopefully increase awareness. And drop me your other suggestions. I read all the comments, and I do consider all of the suggestions. So yeah, put them in there. And once again, thanks for your comments and subscribes and shares and everything, because that helps my new YouTube channel, and it helps it get out. The more comments, the more activity it gets, the better, the more YouTube pushes it. And like a lot of you followers know, I just monetized my channel last April, and let me give you an update, okay? Now I've got maybe close to 150 videos. My channel is about 15 years old. A lot of videos been sitting there just collecting dust. Hoping to breathe new life into them, I'm going to be gradually reintroducing some of them, because they just get lost. And there's always a new audience, a lot of turnover on the internet, always people being born, you know. So anyway, so since April, I have made $166. Now, when I first did my first monetization, I came on with a video, and I said my goal for 1 year, I want to make $100 in 1 year. Well, I have exceeded that, and that's because of you. You're helping me out here. So keep on doing your good stuff, and I hope everybody has a horrible day. This guy's got to go back into the storage shed here.
It's a horrible day in the masked pit. A horrible day in the masked pit. It's so creepy and so spooky.